You know when you're watching a TV show and there are too many storylines that just go into one episode that it seems kind of absurd? Like the main character has an affair and then gets pregnant and then has a stroke and then her father gets arrested and then there's a terrorist attack down the street, all in like a 40-minute episode. And you just think, TV writers, you took it too far. This would never happen in real life. One cannot help but think the same thing looking at the real life events of the past week in the United States of America. So many things have happened that really make you think that it is just too absurd to be true. For instance, a week ago, we all watched the GOP second presidential debate, where the candidates seemed to joke more about Donald Duck and sleeping with teachers than actually talking about the real issues facing the country. Dianne Feinstein, a senator who was serving for 500 years, cast her last vote on Thursday hours before she died. This weekend, a Democratic representative pulled a fire alarm in Congress in order to thwart a Democratic process of voting for a spending bill. There was this alert, this federal emergency alert that went off on all of our phones, and there was a contingent of people on Twitter who were talking about how it was going to activate the nanobots in the vaccine and lead to the end of the world. And now, just to add on to the storyline, to the crazy episode of This Is America telenovela, we now have the Speaker of the House being ousted. This happened yesterday, Tuesday, October 3rd. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, a Republican from California, was voted out of the job. This is the first time that a speaker has been voted out by the U.S. House of Representatives in all of American history. McCarthy said that he will not re-seek the speakership. He will not run again. And Republicans next week, having the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, will convene to try to elect a new speaker. Representative McCarthy said, quote, "I may have lost this vote today, but as I walk out of the chamber, I feel fortunate to have served." Poor Speaker McCarthy, from the beginning, he encountered a lot of trouble in order to get the speakership, and then he was only there for 9 months. There were 15 rounds of voting, we all may recall, back earlier this year in January of 2023 to get him into the speakership. He's probably wondering why he even threw his hat in the ring in the first place. So what happened here? It all started with a representative from Florida, Representative Matt Gaetz. He orchestrated a rare vote called, quote, motion to vacate. Interestingly, some people are saying that Speaker McCarthy can, in a little way, be blamed for what happened to him, specifically the fact that one person was allowed to issue that motion to vacate, because earlier in the year, when he was elected as Speaker, he agreed to a series of demands in order to be elected to that office. And one of those demands was a rules change that included allowing any single lawmaker to file a motion to vacate. So it kind of came around full circle for poor Kevin McCarthy. So right now, the U.S. House of Representatives has a Republican majority. It's slim, but nevertheless a majority. There are 221 representatives who are Republicans compared to 212 Democrats, and then there are 2 seats that are vacant. There are 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives. And this changed back in the 2022 midterms when the U.S. House of Representatives turned red, and then all of these people came into office effective January 1st, 2023. So what happened here, we have to understand the divide of the current U.S. House of Representatives to understand how this vote took place. What happened was that 8 Republicans, led by Matt Gaetz, including Matt Gaetz, joined the entire Democratic caucus of the U.S. House of Representatives. Every Democrat serving in the House. 8 of these Republicans joined all of those Democrats to oust the Speaker. Why? Well, it all started this past weekend during that same time that Representative Jamal Bowman pulled the fire alarm. What happened was the U.S. House of Representatives was voting on a spending bill, and they decided, led by McCarthy, to pass a short-term spending bill to prevent a government shutdown. So essentially, it would keep the government open for another 45 days, kick the can down the road for when the House could again convene and debate more and pass another spending bill. So basically, this short-term spending bill expires on November 17th, 2023. If they did not pass this bill this past weekend, the government would have shut down. And as we know from previous government shutdowns, what would happen is that the vast majority of federal workers, including over 2 million active duty and reserve military troops, would have had to work without pay, which is a total disaster. However, a lot of Republicans, despite this seeming good thing of wanting to prevent a government shutdown, were incensed at Speaker McCarthy for giving some concessions to the Democrats in order to get this bill through. For instance, many of the Republicans in the House wanted aid to Ukraine to stop or to be massively curtailed, and it was cut down a little bit, but still this package does have aid to Ukraine, including $16 billion of federal disaster assistance. That was what President Joe Biden wanted. Also, many Republicans wanted steep spending cuts, which they did not think that Speaker McCarthy appropriately added into this short-term spending bill. 90 House Republicans voted against this short-term spending bill on Saturday. So they were very upset at Speaker McCarthy for, again, giving concessions to the Democrats in order to pass this bill. So here's how the logic went yesterday with this whole motion to vacate. These 8 Republicans, led by Matt Gaetz, were so angry at Speaker McCarthy for collaborating with the Democrats on spending. So then what they did is they collaborated with the Democrats in order to oust him from office. How does that make sense? When you are literally joining every single Democrat in the House, the people who you claim to oppose and hate, you are joining them to oust a Republican leader of the U.S. House of Representatives because you didn't like him for collaborating with the Democrats. Alongside Matt Gaetz of Florida, the other Republicans in the House who voted alongside the Democrats to oust Speaker McCarthy were Andy Biggs of Arizona, Ken Buck of Colorado, Tim Burchett of Tennessee, Eli Crane of Arizona, Bob Good of Virginia, Nancy Mace of South Carolina, and Matt Rosendale of Montana. Here is what Speaker McCarthy had to say about these 8 Republican members who voted to oust him.
They are not conservatives. They voted against, one, the greatest cut in history that Congress has ever voted for, $2 trillion. They voted against work requirements. They voted against NEPA reform. They voted against border security. They voted against... They don't get to say they're conservative because they're angry and they're chaotic. That's not the party I belong to. The party of Reagan was if you believed in your principles that you could govern in a conservative way. They are not conservatives and they do not have the right to have the title.
Speaker McCarthy in other remarks continued by saying, quote, "My fear is that the institution fell today because you can't do the job if 8 people, you have 94% or 96% of your entire conference, but 8 people can partner with the whole other side. How do you govern?" he asked. So essentially he's saying that the almost 100% of Republicans wanted him to stay in office, but because these 8 people joined the other side, then the whole institution, he is saying, fell apart. Okay, so now that we know what happened, let's zoom out and analyze if this was a good move. The upsetting thing here appears to be the double standard. Again, that these 8 Republicans joined with Democrats to oust a Republican speaker because they were mad that that Republican speaker joined with Democrats to pass a short-term spending bill. It makes the Republican Party and the Republican group in the U.S. House of Representatives look disorganized and not unified. And that is absolutely true. Kevin McCarthy was not the perfect Speaker of the House. He was not the greatest, Reagan-like politician to ever grace the halls of Congress or be elected to United States office. But he did a lot of things that were incredibly useful to the GOP. among them being that he was a Republican leader of the U.S. House of Representatives. One thing that few people know is that the Speaker of the House does not necessarily need to be a member of the party that has the majority in the House. There could be a Democratic Speaker of the House as long as the majority, 218 people, vote for that individual. But there's no law, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that it has to be a Republican if the Republicans have control of the House. Also, there isn't a law that necessarily says that the Speaker of the House has to be a serving member in the U.S. House of Representatives. It could be anyone, as long as, again, 218 of the representatives from either party vote for that person. So earlier this year, during those 15 rounds of votes to elect Speaker McCarthy, there were some people who were proposing Donald Trump to be the Speaker of the House. Actually, one of these Republicans, one of the 8, again proposed for Donald Trump to be the new Speaker of the House to replace Kevin McCarthy. I don't think that the 8 Republicans who voted to oust him fully appreciated that even if they weren't enamored with Speaker McCarthy, he was a Republican holding that seat, and that is a good thing to advance their interests. Also, Speaker McCarthy was instrumental in helping the Republicans regain the majority of the U.S. House back in the 2022 midterms. He raised a lot of money for Republican candidates. Now, people criticize Speaker McCarthy for being a member of the donor class, or at least being tied to the donor class. But hello, that's how you get people elected. That is a necessary part of politics, and he did that very effectively so as to bring a majority back into the House. What happened was when Republicans took over, they did a lot of things that advance Republican interests. They got rid of the January 6th committee, and instead they opened the committee which launched investigations into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's terrible business dealings. Also, Kevin McCarthy handed over thousands of hours of footage on January 6th to Tucker Carlson, who aired footage that the January 6th committee did not show to the American people. For instance, one of the biggest bombshells that came out of Speaker McCarthy giving the footage to Tucker Carlson is that we saw that there were 9 different Capitol police officers escorting Jacob Chansley, who's known as the QAnon shaman. He was the guy with the horns and the red, white, and blue paint all over him. They were escorting him throughout the Capitol. That footage that aired showed the American people that the January 6th committee was not giving them the full information. And also it actually led to Jacob Chansley to be taken out of prison. He was serving, I think, over a 3-year sentence, but there was exculpatory evidence, that footage, that was not showed or handed over during his trial. And so thus he was released from prison. That was a major win for Kevin McCarthy, initiated by Kevin McCarthy. He also, as mentioned, really let Representative James Comer spearhead the House Oversight Committee in their investigations into the Bidens. And recently, there was a vote to launch an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. So was he really that awful? He certainly wasn't perfect. But was he so bad that he deserved to be ousted, and now the seat is vacant and God knows who it could go to? The main thing, however, is that it really makes the GOP look divided. Say what you want about the Democratic Party and their terrible, terrible, terrible initiatives, whether it comes to crime, defunding the police, radical race and gender theory being taught in schools. Say what you want about them. They are incredibly united. It is a huge strength of them, and it has contributed hugely to their success. They do not go against each other. I'll give you some examples. In 2008, when Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were running for office for President of the United States, they sparred relentlessly at each other. That primary season was so contentious between Obama and Clinton, and Obama had that historic victory to become the nominee for the Democrats over Hillary Clinton. You know what he did? It was a very shrewd move. When President Obama won the presidency, he appointed Hillary Clinton as his Secretary of State. Now, people at the time were kind of stunned because they had just watched these two go at it for, months on the campaign cycle. And then now Hillary Clinton was serving second to the vice president as arguably the most important member of the Obama administration, the Obama cabinet. Why did they do that? They're shrewd. They know that they are stronger together than apart. Another recent example, President Joe Biden giving the vice presidency to Kamala Harris. They sparred also relentlessly during the primary season. Remember when Kamala went after Joe Biden for opposing busing, and she said that little girl was me, and there were all those T-shirts, that little girl was me, that essentially Joe Biden was giving the backhand to little girls like Kamala Harris who would not have enjoyed the benefits of busing. That they were certainly not friends during the primary season. But again, they knew that if they joined their coalition, they would be a lot stronger together, and it worked. I mean, I could give so many more examples. When President Biden when it was clear that he was going to secure the nomination for the Democratic nomination for the presidency, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Mike Bloomberg, even Tulsi Gabbard all threw their weight behind President Biden. That is not true always when we see Republican candidates getting the nomination. In 2016, a lot of Republicans went against Trump. In 2020, a lot of Republicans went against Trump. And in 2024, certainly a lot of Republicans are going to go against Trump. So when something like this happens, when Republicans initiate the demise of another Republican, it just has the effect of showing the American people that Republicans are divided. That is not a good message to send, especially when their opponents are incredibly unified in their policy and in their support of one another. Now, on a final note, as crazy and tumultuous and disheartening as this ousting Kevin McCarthy as Speaker seems, and indeed is, there actually is reason for optimism in the Republican Party if we unify. Even if you look at the second presidential debate, the debate itself was a blank show, but actually the candidates up there were very strong candidates, and they're young, which shows that there's a future of some really competent, good leaders in the Republican Party. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, excellent candidate. Vivek Ramaswamy, another excellent candidate. Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, the two South Carolina candidates, are great. So we do have reason for optimism, also because a lot of the Democratic policies, again, on crime, on homelessness, on education, on the border, are simply not working. And the disastrous consequences of those policies are increasingly becoming impossible to ignore. We will see how this plans out. And as always, you can count on Julie Noted to tell you the latest storyline in the American sitcom. I hope you'll join me again here soon. A reminder to hit the subscribe button down below so that you can stay notified with every new piece of content I post. Take care, and I'll see you soon.